Ethereum and Blockchain Super Conference is coming to Dallas, Texas, February 16, 17, and 18 in 2018. If you know of a better way to get the latest insider knowledge about crypto, to hear directly from the top minds in this field, to interact personally with 800 fellow crypto lovers, hodlers, investors, miners, traders, developers, and founders, then I'd like to hear about it. If you don't, then you don't want to miss out. Register today for the Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference. Go to bitcoinsuperconference.com and register today as a super early bird to get the lowest rates on tickets and hotel rooms. That's bitcoinsuperconference.com.
Welcome to Almost Here, Round the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies poised to transform our lives for better or worse are the focus of this podcast. Almost here means these technologies are now here and starting to be used, or just around the corner, from Bitcoin to artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. This is Tracy Murda on behalf of Richard Jacob here at Future Tech Podcast. Today I'm very excited to welcome special guest Joseph Kelly, co-founder and CEO of Unchained Capital. Joseph, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate your time.
Oh, you bet. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's jump in, Joe, and start talking a little bit about, just tell me a little bit about yourself and your background and how you got started with the whole blockchain technology and Bitcoin.
Sure. Yeah, happy to. So I've been an entrepreneur for the last 8 or 9 years, and my first company was a technology startup I co-founded with 2 other co-founders here in Austin. It was in the big data technology space. It was called InfoChimps, and we ultimately provided a kind of a hosted data analytics platform for large Fortune 500 companies. So it was a great experience for us. We sold that company in 2013 to Computer Sciences Corporation, and really along that time period, we had heard about Bitcoin, my co-founder and I, and we'd gotten excited about it as a new technology, new potential. But it was only after the acquisition we found ourselves in a position to buy a little Bitcoin and sort of have a stake in it and learn more about it, and also have the time for it. So I'd say around 2013 is when we kind of really dove in head first, and we talked a lot about what kinds of projects we'd want to start next. Looked at various kinds of companies and different industries that could use some of our maybe big data skills and things we'd learned in that company. But we kept coming back to Bitcoin and the blockchain. Just found that there's too much potential here to ignore. And so that's really what we spent probably 2 years in that sort of exploratory mode, and really landed on this idea behind Unchained Capital, say early last year, early 2016, and kind of from there really dove in deeper on the actual due diligence and customer interviews and technological feasibility and all the aspects that led into us kind of building up our minimum viable product over the last year and a half.
I'm just curious, Joe, too, and take no offense to this, but you guys have found a lot of success at, relatively young age. And do you think a lot of it has to do with your success, has to do with the fact that you're younger guys, you're in Austin, kind of a younger crowd in terms of, the knowledge of Bitcoin and the acceptance of this whole new world and space that we live in? Do you kind of get a sense that is part of, what has made the transition to success for you all a little bit easier, dare I say?
Well, thanks. Yeah, I think definitely the age can have something to do with these kinds of issues. I think people can point to that where a lot of startup founders or technology company founders can be younger, and probably a reason for that is just it's easier to look at these things sometimes sort of fresh eyes, and where you have systems and ecosystems, especially in finance, that are somewhat ossified or have just evolved in somewhat, or if they're not arbitrary ways, they've evolved in ways that are maybe for reasons no longer relevant, just because the technology that we used at that time just doesn't exist, and but people still conduct business in that way. And so sometimes it's easier to come at these industries and problems just with a fresh set of eyes and say, no, well the real thing here is X or is blah, and then this is what we should be paying attention to. This is the kind of first principles based argument for how something should be, and it's just done some other way only for historical reasons. And I think we sometimes have an advantage for being able to do that, not to discount experience, because that's something we seek out a lot whenever we enter these areas too.
Sure. So tell our listeners about Unchained Capital. What was the vision behind it or the ultimate goals? What did you see out there that the world was lacking?
Sure. So we, as ourselves, as I mentioned, kind of had bought some Bitcoin, and we, over time, really tried to evaluate, well, what do we do with our own Bitcoin, and what do other people do with their own Bitcoin? And pretty conclusively, the number one answer was nothing. We had just sat on it. It was kind of a speculative investment, so to speak, something we felt like had long-term potential, would likely go up further in price. And in the friends of ours or other individuals we'd meet that also have Bitcoin, that story rang true. That's the same kind of pattern that they were in. And then with the Bitcoin blockchain, one of the fantastic features of it, of course, is that you can actually go and download the blockchain. You can look at yourself. You say, what happens to Bitcoin? How much of it moves? Where does it go? What are the kind of characteristics of how this money flows through the system? And you can say pretty definitively that 60% of all Bitcoin hasn't moved in the last 12 months or more. And so this is a pretty stable trend. This is something that's kind of been in place for many years. And so it's I wouldn't say it's a super well-kept secret. It's definitely a open secret out there, say that just a lot of people are hoarders in Bitcoin and prefer to sit on their assets versus transact with them. And so as we kind of looked at that pattern, we thought, well, here's Bitcoin a year ago at only maybe $8 to $10 billion of total overall market cap. If 60% of it hasn't moved in the last year or more, that's $6 billion or so worldwide of this new capital asset that no one's doing anything with. It's not doing anything in the real world. It's not advantaging anybody. It's just sitting there in cold wallets. And so we thought that was both perhaps a problem and an opportunity. That through a lot of history, as you've had any large pool of static capital amass itself, whether it's in the form of real estate and homes, or whether it's in the form of private company stock, things that can't be traded on exchanges and whatnot, usually have products that surface up and become available to those people to sort of have their cake and eat it too. Have their asset that is this maybe illiquid thing or something that doesn't transact with too often, and have some kind of benefit that comes from some either leverage on top of that asset or some derivative or some other financial instrument they're using to kind of have that best of both worlds. And we thought that was something that was just inevitably going to need to come to Bitcoin and these assets. And we thought there were unique technological and regulatory challenges that were going to be involved in solving that kind of problem. And what probably excites me and my co-founder most of any problems that we go into is the opportunity to learn and the opportunity to kind of be there at some front of learning within an industry. And we thought this was just the best place to be. So we looked at this, back looking at this big static pool of capital. What can you do for these people? And we really settled on loans and leverage as kind of the first key thing you'd want to unlock. So with leverage on your Bitcoin, that say you can use that Bitcoin to get a secured loan, that can enable a whole bunch of other kinds of products. And it's really kind of the first step towards kind of, institutional nirvana, or you full on acceptance within the mature financial ecosystem. As soon as you can use Bitcoin as collateral within that ecosystem, it's that's almost one of the last sort of key pieces to fall for it to be as mature of an asset as we all think it can be. So we thought this was just the most interesting area to work in, and that's why we've been at it for the last 2 years.
Joe, why do you think that trend exists to either hold your Bitcoin or just trade within? I mean, is it lack of knowledge of what is available to do with the Bitcoin, or is it the fear of, getting rid of your Bitcoin? Where do you think that comes from?
Yeah, we try to dig in on this a lot with our early interviews with customers. We try to determine, okay, well, if there was more acceptance of Bitcoin, if it was easier to use on e-commerce sites, if you could use it to buy coffee, would you still spend with it? And the answer is usually no. They would still prefer to hang on to it. And I think, it's a self-reinforcing kind of thing, in that people have kind of watched the price go up over time. Maybe they did spend some Bitcoin at various points in time. That person who spent the 10,000 Bitcoins on the pizza, kind of the classic epitome of the story. That was a really expensive pizza in hindsight. You could have just held on to it. So I think that really happens. And as you have people doing more hoarding, you also start to limit the supply of Bitcoin that's for sale. And so as people kind of turn more and more as their Bitcoin becomes more valuable and the kind of thing they want to hang on to and put in cold storage and put in that, that mode of not being spent in the last 12 months or more, then you have even less, Bitcoin available for trade, which is going to have upward price pressure as long as there's still incoming demand. So it's an interesting kind of feedback loop that develops around that.
So what are the problems that Bitcoin holders may face? What are some of the options? I mean, I'm afraid to sell. What does that mean? What could potentially happen?
Yeah, first is certainly security. Why is that? And Bitcoin holders should study up and do their homework on how to take care of those assets, of course, and use hardware wallets or whether they find appropriate. But then beyond that, your solutions up till now has been only to really sell. If you want to get some benefit from your Bitcoin, there's no real credible investment products you can put them into. This is part of where you've seen the rise of ICOs is also explained in part by this phenomenon that you have all this kind of static capital that people there's a new class of wealthy Bitcoin holders, and now they're kind of itching. What do I do with this? I've got millions of this Bitcoin now. Oh, here's an ICO project that might stand to I'll give me some return for sitting on this Bitcoin. I'll give it some Bitcoin and hopefully see some economic value come out of it. So it's definitely a bigger trend than just Unchained and just the kinds of products we're offering to it. There is the whole kind of ecosystem out there that in some regards are helping people do stuff with their Bitcoin. But for us is to say still most of the real world operates on fiat. It's not the case you can go buy a house with Bitcoin tomorrow or go buy a business with Bitcoin. You're going to need fiat for that. And then also, as you might be scared to do that because you feel like Bitcoin is still going to appreciate in price. You'd rather spend in dollars and keep and save in Bitcoin. We're kind of your only solution that you could take advantage of today. That's essentially get leverage, get it at a reasonable interest rate, and use and spend that cash, those fiat dollars, for purchases or investments, and kind of hang on to your Bitcoin. And that's as far as we can tell, and that's at least today. If you wanted to do something, we're one of, or if not the only, kind of in operation secured loan provider on Bitcoin.
Is it also true, Joe, that selling your Bitcoin, you could be setting yourself up for tax issues or implications as well?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for reminding me of that. That's absolutely something that Bitcoin holders face, is that especially if you've held on for a long while, you might have a considerable amount of capital gains that you've had, and as soon as you sell, you'd be realizing those gains, and here in the United States, that'd be a taxable event, and so many folks might, for whatever reason, might not want to lose on that value and need to write that check to the government. So we find that using a loans product like ourselves, a leverage product, is one way to kind of skirt that issue and just hang on to your assets without having to pay capital gains. Let's
talk a little bit more in depth about Unchained Capital. Now, who are your clients? Who are you working with? Individuals, businesses? Is there a certain demographic?
Sure, you bet. So we see the most of our clients and folks that come to us are individuals. We do have commercial interests, and that represents a kind of growing fraction of our customer base, I'd say. But for the most part, the early adopters and folks we found the most resonance with have ended up being wealthy or semi-wealthy Bitcoin holders who have held a Bitcoin for a while. It's appreciated considerably. They now have the hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars worth of this asset, and that's now enough to start to want to do something interesting with. In many cases, they're trying to buy either a house or a piece of investment real estate property. It's a very common use case. Is people have this asset, but it's Bitcoin. It doesn't give them a dividend. It doesn't give them any kind of income. Again, the only way to subside on it is to sell little bits and pieces here and there. But we offer a way to say you can leverage your Bitcoin to maybe purchase an investment property that might give you a fixed income that can maybe support yourself and have this U.S. dollar income on the side while you're also still exposed to Bitcoin and its potential increase in value. So that's been one use case. The individuals making purchases. We have individuals that want to consolidate other higher interest debt using their Bitcoin, and then we even have now this kind of blended individual and commercial use cases of folks that want to buy a business, buy another small website, or expand their business somehow. Miners, we have certain customers that are miners and use these leverage loans to purchase more equipment for mining. That's a common use case. So it definitely is broader than just one individual class of customer and kind of service Bitcoin holders' needs overall.
Sure. So tell me how this actually works. What are the services that Unchained Capital is offering?
Sure. So users, individuals or businesses that are interested in leveraging their Bitcoin. And soon Ethereum will be supporting that in the not too distant future. But for now, folks that want to leverage their Bitcoin can come to our website, request an account, as long as they're in a state in which we can operate, which currently is about 30 states or more. We will send them an invite. They can come onto our platform, go through some pretty simple know your customer, anti-money laundering type of checks. Once they're approved on the account level, they can request a loan. They can request a loan for anywhere from $10,000 to $1 million, and they can request those for 3-month terms up to 2-year terms, and interest rates between 10 to 14% APR. As soon as they've put in that loan request and we send them back, that sort of package of documents that confirm all those details and spell out the actual loan agreement. Once they receive those and get those back to us, we create an escrow address that is where the Bitcoin lives for the duration of the loan. It's a cold wallet stored multi-signature vault that they deposit their funds into. And once that deposit is confirmed, their Bitcoin is confirmed in that address, then we would disperse their loan amount. Once that's been dispersed, their loan is now live, and they're billed on sort of a regular monthly cycle for their interest payments. We auto-collect that from their checking accounts, and we service the loan. So that means that we work with the outside capital providers who provide these loans. They provide the capital kind of through us. We manage the servicing of the loan for the life of it. So we're collecting those payments, and any capital providers that they're working with, they see those kind of downstream of us after the client pays it.
Joe, if I'm looking at this type of loan, what's the difference? What's the advantage to, let's say, going into a bank and getting a loan?
Sure. So first is that banks still don't recognize cryptocurrency or these assets as kind of real assets. So depending on your profile as a person or business, when you come in and look for a loan, they're usually looking at if you have history at the bank, that's one. Then they're looking at 2, kind of your assets overall, like what's your financial picture look like for your ability to pay back this loan. And they're also probably looking at your credit, what's your kind of credit history look like and your credit score. And so depending on your situation, those might all be things that might not work out for the best loan terms or best loan interest rate for you. And so you might want to look for another option like Unchained. Again, given that banks don't accept really Bitcoin as collateral or necessarily treat it maybe as a valid asset, if you are like many people who might find themselves in the crypto space, say Bitcoin rich, cash poor, you just don't have a financial picture for a bank that looks like anything like their traditional clients, and they're more likely than not going to be comfortable working with you. So we offer folks like that an option. We don't do any credit checks. That's another kind of advantage. We're not hitting your credit scores or dinging your credit scores by doing a hard credit check or anything like that. So it is somewhat non-traditional in that way, and we find our clients that come to us are coming to us for those reasons overall, and as well we would find our interest rates can be pretty competitive too.
Yeah, I read that about the no credit check. I'm sure that's also an advantage. Like you said, if you're Bitcoin rich, cash poor, that can definitely come in handy. So when it comes to the loans, is there any sort of requirement of this is what I'm using it for? You need to, explain yourself to anyone like that, or is it pretty much just you have the Bitcoin, you kind of get the loan?
No, there is definitely we ask for the loan purpose, and we are careful to make sure that folks that we work with and what they're putting their money towards are nothing related to any kind of criminal activity or anything that would be uncomfortable with in that way. So there's a requirement for sure that these aren't being used for purpose for a crime or anything like that.
Very interesting. How secure is it?
How secure is the holdings of the client assets or
right? Yeah, exactly. And if you can kind of walk me through also just like a typical loan relationship with Unchained Capital. From you talked about the beginnings, maybe the ongoing relationship, and then how, if you fulfill that loan, what does that look like in the end?
Sure. Yeah, happy to. So in the first case, as to the client assets, they are held in a multi-signature cold storage vault. That means it's a vault that's secured by multiple keys that are necessary to spend or move any of the assets that are held in that wallet. All those keys are held offline. All those keys at present are held by us, the organization is Unchained, but they are geographically dispersed. So it's a fairly secure process. It's definitely engineered up to really high standards, and we use PCI compliance standards for all of customer data and any data that we do have to store on server somewhere. But that does not include any keys. We don't operate any hot wallets or anything of that kind. So the funds end up being very secure as to where they're stored, and they're stored there for the life of the loan and only moved in the case of a default. Say the client fails to make an interest payment and is beyond our due date, and or at the conclusion of a loan when they pay the loan back in full, then we would assemble the keys to move the assets back to an address of the client's choice. And then over the life of the loan, as long as the loan is being serviced, as long as the loan's interest payments are being made by the client, all is good. And we do monitor the price of the assets over time. Our standard loan terms are such that if there's a 25% price drop from the origination of the loan, then that's our first collateral maintenance call. That's when we would request the client to kind of rebalance their collateral up to the original ratio. Our ratio right now for all our loans are 50%. So if you're looking for a $100,000 loan, we require $200,000 worth of collateral. And so again, if that ratio gets out of whack, such that there's a 25% price drop, we'd ask for that to be remade. And if there's only a 45% price drop, then the loan would be considered in default. So that 25% is really in there to give people nice heads up and plenty of leeway to rebalance the collateral that we have in store for them so that they don't hit that 45% marker.
What is the average length of the loans that you're seeing?
We're seeing folks between 1 to 2 years, I'd say. It's definitely kind of not too short term, but we're not looking at 10, 20-year mortgages here.
Absolutely. And if you can say, what is an average amount that folks are getting loans for?
Sure. I'd say probably low six figures would be an accurate average.
Okay. Now, is Unchained Capital working on any other new developments or technologies that our listeners should be aware of and watching out for?
Sure. Yeah, so at least a couple things. One is our support for Ether, the asset for the Ethereum Blockchain. That's something we've had and developed for a couple weeks now, a couple months even, and is just kind of coming out of internal testing, and we'll be ready to put out some open source code and even do some bounties around, likely for our vaults work on that blockchain. So that's something that folks can look forward to. And we have also mixed some exciting kind of partnerships on the lending capital side and some technology solutions that we're driving for how we work with our lenders. I can't go into too much detail yet, but those are kind of around the corner as well.
Sure. Excellent. So for our listeners who are interested in getting some more information on Unchained Capital services and loan offerings, how do I get started?
Sure. Please visit us at unchainedcapital.com. You're welcome to shoot us an email as well at hello@unchained-capital.com. And as soon as you're on the site, you can just request an account or find an easy way to reach out to us. We're also on Telegram at Unchained Capital. And if you're either looking for a loan, please contact us today. Or if you are someone who might be interested in backing our loans as a capital provider, please also reach out.
And lastly on this, who is an ideal loan candidate?
An ideal loan candidate is someone who fits the kind of customer profile that I sort of mentioned as someone who has been a Bitcoin holder for a while now, has seen that asset appreciate considerably and wants to do something with it and thinks they would regret selling. So if you find yourself in that situation, just totally come talk to us.
Awesome. Joe, I want to thank you so much for your time and this awesome information. This is really good stuff. For our listeners, again, this is Joe Kelly, co-founder and CEO of Unchained Capital. Joe, thank you again, and we look forward to seeing where you guys go from here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
The Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference is coming to Dallas, Texas, February 16, 17, and 18 in 2018. If you know of a better way to get the latest insider knowledge about crypto, to hear directly from the top minds in this field, to interact personally with 800 fellow crypto lovers, hodlers, investors, miners, traders, developers, and founders, then I'd like to hear about it. If you don't, then you don't want to miss out. Register today for the Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference. Go to bitcoinsuperconference.com and register today as a super early bird to get the lowest rates on tickets and hotel rooms. That's bitcoinsuperconference.com.
You have been listening to Almost Here, Around the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Subscribe to this podcast, post a review to discover more future technologies that are poised to transform our lives for better or worse, such as Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.